What do you do when the man who destroyed your family arrives for Thanksgiving dinner? For Stacy Mace, the answer was complete paralysis in the grand doorway of White Cedar, her family's sprawling Vermont estate. She watched in stunned disbelief as Stephen Miller casually handed his expensive wool coat to a staff member. His movements smooth and unervingly familiar. Those piercing green eyes found hers instantly across the marble foyer, and that knowing smirk she remembered so well played at the corners of his lips. "Stacy, darling, I believe you remember Stephen Miller," her father Arthur announced with a heartiness that rang completely false in the tense air. Her mother Eleanor stood rigidly by the massive stone fireplace, her knuckles white around her wine glass, while from the dining room entrance, her younger sister Chloe shot her a wide-eyed, panicked look that spoke volumes. 3 long, painful years had passed since her brother Liam's tragic death in that Boston alley, and now the man they all held responsible stood comfortably in their home, casually accepting a glass of their finest bourbon, as if he were an honored guest rather than the source of their endless grief. The rich scent of roasting turkey and sage stuffing suddenly felt suffocating, the entire festive atmosphere poisoned by his unwelcome presence. The Thanksgiving dinner unfolded like a beautifully set trap, each carefully prepared course more agonizing than the last. Stacy merely pushed her food around the delicate china plate while strained. Polite conversation filled the opulent dining room, the air hanging heavy with unspoken accusations and the relentless clinking of silverware against fine china. "So, Stephen," Chloe finally ventured nervously, breaking the uncomfortable silence that had settled over the table, "are you planning to stay in Vermont for very long?" "That depends entirely on the quality of hospitality I receive," he replied smoothly, his gaze locking with Stacy's across the candlelit table with an intensity that made her breath catch. Her fork clattered loudly against her plate, the sharp sound making several guests jump and all conversation cease abruptly. "The Mace family takes great pride in our long-standing traditions and values," she stated coldly, her voice cutting through the sudden quiet, "which historically don't include warmly welcoming outsiders who don't understand our ways." Her father quickly intervened, his voice tight with tension. "Stephen has made a very generous proposal to merge our port operations. It could very well save the entire company." When Stacy finally excused herself and fled to the kitchen's relative sanctuary, Stephen followed moments later, his presence filling the spacious room. "Running away, little bird?" he murmured, using Liam's old, affectionate nickname for her that felt like a violation. "I hate you," she whispered, her back pressing against the cold marble countertop as if seeking an escape. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to an intimate, challenging level. "Do you really mean that? Or are you just saying what you've convinced yourself is true?" After the tense dessert course, Stacy found her mother Eleanor standing alone in the glass-walled sunroom, staring out at the dark, frost-kissed gardens as if searching for answers in the shadows. "How can you just stand there and allow this to happen?" Stacy demanded, her voice shaking with pent-up emotion and frustration. "Your father is doing what he must to save everything your grandfather built," Eleanor replied quietly, not turning from the window, her reflection showing a face etched with weary resignation. "Sometimes survival in this world means finding a way to make peace with the devil himself. This isn't making peace. This is complete and utter surrender," Stacy cried, hot tears welling in her eyes as she gestured back toward the dining room. "That man out there killed Liam." Unable to bear the conversation any longer, she grabbed her heavy coat from the hall closet and rushed out into the bitter cold night, the freezing air a sharp relief to her burning cheeks. She made her way through the bare-limbed trees to the family cemetery, kneeling before her brother's sleek granite headstone, the cold from the stone seeping through her clothes. "I'm so sorry, Liam," she whispered into the biting wind, her gloved fingers tracing the engraved letters of his name as if she could summon him back. I don't know what's happening anymore or what I'm supposed to do. He always said you were the strong one in the family, a deep, familiar voice said from behind her, making her jump. She turned to find Stephen watching her from a few feet away, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his broad shoulders dusted with snow. "Why are you really here, Stephen?" she asked, her breath forming pale clouds in the frigid air between them. He closed the distance between them in 2 slow strides, his intense gaze never leaving hers. "I'm tired of pretending I don't remember everything about that night." His quiet words in the frozen cemetery unleashed a torrent of buried memories that came flooding back with painful, vivid clarity, sweeping away 3 years of carefully constructed hatred. She had been there that terrible night in the rain-slicked alley behind the nightclub, had seen with her own eyes Liam pull the knife first in his drunken, reckless rage. She had witnessed the entire chaotic struggle that followed, saw Stephen disarm her brother in a frantic motion, then watched in horror as Liam lunged again and Stephen's desperate, defensive shove sent him stumbling backward into that sharp-edged metal dumpster. The sickening crack of his head hitting the metal still echoed in her deepest nightmares, a sound that haunted her sleep. It had been a tragic, avoidable accident, but in the brutal context of their family's century-old feud, the simple truth would have destroyed them both. "Run, Stacy," he'd told her that night, his voice urgent in the damp darkness as he pulled her up from where she knelt beside Liam's body. "You were never here. They'll crucify us both if they find out you witnessed this." Through her choking sobs, she'd asked why he would take the blame alone for something that wasn't his fault. "Because I won't let them destroy you too," he'd said, his hands gripping her shoulders firmly, his eyes fierce in the dim light. "But you have to promise me something. You have to make them believe you hate me. You have to be completely convincing." For 3 agonizing years, she had built her entire life around that desperate promise, constructing impenetrable walls of hatred to protect them both from their warring families. Now, standing at her brother's grave with the man who had sacrificed his reputation and freedom for her, those walls crumbled into dust around her. "You promised to hate me?" Stephen whispered, his breath forming a warm cloud in the frigid air between them. "You were so convincing that you almost made me believe it myself." The space between them evaporated into the cold night air, the final barrier of lies and years of separation dissolving in an instant. Stacy didn't know who moved first, but suddenly her hands were fisted in the rough wool of his coat, pulling him down toward her, and his mouth was on hers in a desperate, crashing kiss. It wasn't gentle or questioning. It was a furious, hungry collision of 3 years of suppressed truth, manufactured grief, and secret, shameful longing. His arms locked around her, crushing her against the solid wall of his chest, one hand tangling in her wind-blown hair to tilt her head back, deepening the kiss with a raw, possessive intensity that stole her breath. She met his ferocity with her own, her nails digging into his shoulders through the thick fabric, kissing him back with all the passion and truth she had been forced to deny for so long, her body trembling not from the cold but from the overwhelming rightness of it. It tasted of salt tears, cold winter air, and the shocking, undeniable truth of what they had both sacrificed. This was the heart's defiant victory over a lifetime of war and family expectation. When they finally broke apart, gasping for air as if they'd both been drowning, their foreheads rested together, their breath mingling in white clouds between them. "I'm so sorry," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion, his hands moving to cradle her face. "For everything. For Liam. For making you live with this terrible weight all alone. I'm the one who's sorry," she choked out, her hands still clutching his coat as if he were her only anchor in a stormy sea, her tears now freezing on her cheeks. "I let you carry all that blame alone. I was such a coward." "You were surviving," he corrected gently, his thumb stroking her wet cheek, his green eyes soft with understanding. We both were, the only way we knew how in an impossible situation. Back inside the mansion, the fragile peace shattered. Arthur was arguing in hushed, frantic tones with their security chief, Marcus Waltz. Chloe rushed over, her face pale. "Stacy, it's not a merger," she whispered urgently. "I heard Marcus say hostile takeover. I think Stephen is here to destroy us." Stacy's blood ran cold. She looked at Stephen, whose expression had hardened into that of the enemy she'd always believed him to be. Had his confession been just another layer of his game? Storming into the study, she demanded, "Father, what's happening?" Arthur looked up, defeated. His offer was a ruse. His father is buying our debt. He's here to claim his prize. All eyes turned to Stephen. "My father's plans are not my own," he stated firmly. "You're a Miller. It's in your blood," Arthur snarled. "My blood is what kept your daughter's name out of a police report." Stephen shot back, his voice dangerously quiet. "I took the blame for Liam's accident. My father is blackmailing me, threatening to expose Stacy's presence that night." The room froze. "Stacy?" her mother whispered, horrified. Stephen looked at Stacy, his eyes pained. "I came to warn you. The merger was my only way in." The full, unvarnished truth of Stephen's sacrifice hung heavily in the air, stark and terrifying in its implication. Arthur Mace slumped back into his leather chair, the fight draining from him as the magnitude of his misjudgment and the true nature of the threat crashed down. But Marcus Waltz subtly stepped forward, his hand resting ominously on his holstered weapon, his loyalties suddenly and frighteningly unclear. "With all due respect, Arthur, this could still be an elaborate deception," Marcus said, his cold eyes fixed on Stephen. "A Miller ploy to gain your trust before the final blow." In that critical moment, Stacy moved without hesitation, placing herself squarely at Stephen's side, her shoulder brushing his in a solid, united front. She reached for his hand, their fingers lacing together tightly, a tangible symbol of their newfound alliance against the forces trying to tear them apart. "He's telling the truth," Stacy declared, her voice clear and strong, no longer shaking as she looked from her father to Marcus. "I was there that night. Everything he said is true. He protected me, and his father is now using that protection against him, against all of us." The heart had won the first, crucial battle, bridging the chasm of hatred between their families, but the war for their future, against the vengeful Alistair Miller and the shadows of doubt within their own walls, was just beginning. They stood together, hands clasped, ready to face whatever came next, their shared secret now their greatest strength. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more dark romance stories.